welcome back everybody, and I am bringing another league coverage to the channel. And this second league that I'm going to be providing coverage for is, as you can see, Major League Rugby, which is the professional rugby league in the United States. And this week we're going to be going through round 1 and 2 for the MLR. And you'll see why both round 1 and 2 in a second here. And if you aren't familiar with Major League Rugby, there are 6 teams that play in the competition, and the 6 teams are as followed. We have Anthem, Rugby Carolina, California Legion, Chicago Hounds, New England Free Jacks, Old Glory DC, and last but not least, the Seattle Seawolves. So again, these are the 6 teams that compete in the MLR competition. And round 1 was played between Anthem and California Legion. And this was, as if I remember correctly, this was like their opening scene curtains rising game. So there was, again, only one game played in round 1 between Anthem and Legion, in which, as you can see, Anthem won by a score of 39-26. On a cool little side note here, this was actually Anthem's first ever win as a team in the MLR, so kind of cool to see Anthem create a little bit of club history here. So, good start to the season for Anthem, and then, as you'll see in a hot second here, Legion was able to bounce back and get their first win of the season in round 2. Now, round 2, all 6 teams were playing, so there were 3 games played the previous weekend. The first game that was on the schedule last week was between Seattle and Old Glory, in which Seattle won by a score of 33-16. And now we're going to take a very quick look at the stat line from the Seattle Old Glory game. And what you're going to see here is a very, very strong performance by Seattle. It wasn't like a terrible performance by Old Glory, but Seattle was just so much stronger and was able to exert so much pressure offensively on Old Glory that Old Glory was just stuck playing defense a lot during the course of the game. So, again, obviously, Seattle was the better team offensively. 3 tries scored for Seattle to just 1 for Old Glory. Seattle was able to be dominant in possession plus territory, so they're holding on to the ball more, playing in Old Glory's half more. Again, Old Glory had to absorb a lot of pressure on the defensive end, in which they made 186 tackles. Old Glory made 186 tackles to just 87 for Seattle. And again, to emphasize the point of Seattle being just a super strong team and just exerting a lot of offensive pressure, Seattle had 494 meters gained during the course of this game to 226 for Old Glory. So again, strong win for Seattle. This was both Seattle and Old Glory's first games of the season. So this is exactly how Seattle would have wanted to start the season. 3 tries scored, 2+, it's almost 3 score margin of victory here. Very strong start to the season for Seattle. And obviously Old Glory will look to bounce back in round 3. So if we go back to our lovely round 2 recap here, our second game on the schedule was between California Legion and Free Jacks. And as we can see, Legion bounced back from that round 1 loss to have the most dominant victory of round 2, and Legion won by a score of 43-5 over the New England Free Jacks, which, if you've been following MLR for the last couple of seasons, this is the most surprising result of the weekend, because Free Jacks have won the last 3 championships in the MLR, so a bit surprising, in my opinion, to see Free Jacks just get the pants beat off of them in round 2. So let's take a quick look at the stat line here. We won't need to look at this for very long to understand how dominant Legion was this week. So we'll just start at the top. 6 tries scored for the Legion to just 1 for the Free Jacks. Possession and territory definitely skewed towards Legion. Free Jacks are stuck making a lot of tackles and playing a lot of defense. Free Jacks had to make 194 tackles during the course of this game. Now, the one thing I will say, I think defense kind of let the Free Jacks down this week because they had 41 missed tackles. It was absolutely massive number of missed tackles right there. And so 41 missed tackles for the Free Jacks. If you look down 2 lines, 41 missed tackles translated into 16 clean breaks by California Legion. Just massive conversion of missed tackles to clean breaks, giving Legion plenty of running ability and scoring opportunity. And talking about running opportunity, I think this is the most meters gained I've ever seen during the course of a game. Somehow Legion gained 827 meters during the course of this game, which is just an absolute mind-blowing number. Now, it's not that the Free Jacks weren't running all over the field themselves, because the Free Jacks had 576 meters gained, so a huge number of meters gained for both teams here. It was crazy. But Legion had more of a bend and don't break defense this particular round, whereas the Free Jacks just didn't really have it going on defense this particular week, and obviously let up quite a large number of scores as a result of it. So, strong bounce back win for California, and the Free Jacks will absolutely be looking to have a bounce back game coming up in round 3. So now back to the overall results. The last game for round 2 was between Anthem and Chicago, in which Chicago won by a score of 33-19. And we'll look at this stat sheet here as well. So obviously Anthem would have loved to have continued their momentum into round 2 from round 1's victory, but Chicago is one of the best teams in the league, if not the best team in the league this year. So always going to be a tough game to go against Chicago. And I will say, don't let the scoreline or the stat sheet part kind of fool you. Chicago was very much the dominant team. And then in the last 10 minutes or so, Anthem scored 2 quick tries to, rebuild a bit of pride, finish the game on a positive note, and, decrease the margin of victory for Chicago. So, Chicago, 5 tries scored to 3 for Anthem. Now, again, possession, territory, slight edge towards Chicago, not, dominant like we've seen in the last 2 games, which is kind of surprising to not see Chicago have more dominant possession and territory, given how strong they played during the course of this week. But, you start looking at every other stat on this sheet here, it's almost like, it almost looks like Anthem maybe should have won. Anthem having many more meters gained during the course of this game, many more clean breaks, less penalties. But, the defensive effort for Chicago definitely kicked in, definitely kept Anthem from scoring. So, good way for Chicago to kick off the season, getting a victory against Anthem. And then, just like every other team that happened to lose this past week, Anthem will look to bounce back and get back in the winner's circle come round 3. Now, before we go over the schedule for round 3, let's take a look at the overall standings. So again, let's kind of not inherently take this with a grain of salt, but let's all just understand that Legion plus Anthem are ahead. so to speak, because they have one extra game played. So we see California sitting at the top of the table for right now with 6 points overall with a 1-1 record. And then California is followed by Chicago, then Anthem RC. We have Seattle sitting in the 4 seed, and then Old Glory DC and New England Free Jacks rounding up bottom. So again, as the season wears on, don't be surprised to see Seattle move up towards the top. Don't be surprised if Chicago just chills at the number 1 ranking for the entire season. Or also, don't be surprised if New England makes a stunning turnaround and plays like the championship team everybody knows they're capable of being. So here is the live table. Here's the rankings for the MLR after 2 rounds. And let's just take a quick look at round 3's schedule. So today, April 11th, we will see a very, very big matchup here with Old Glory versus New England. This was a semifinal matchup last year that New England won. So, big game, 2 East Coast teams going against each other. So that should hopefully be a fun game to watch. And then tomorrow, Sunday, April 12th, the other 2 games will be played, in which Seattle Seawolves will play Anthem RC. And then the last game of the week will be California versus Chicago. So that is it for MLR round 1 and 2. If anybody likes this content, likes the video, please hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. Please feel free to share this with somebody that you know that may like this. And again, that is it for MLR rounds 1 and 2 this week, and then we will be back next week with coverage of round 3. Enjoy the rugby, and I will see you next week.